Alrighty, we're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our UD interview series. We're going live on several UD social media platforms such as YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook today. Let's be active and join our conversation in the comment section. And we have been hearing, some complaints from people lately that we're not being as active as they want us to be, and produce more content. We apologize for that. Our team consists of young professionals who are busy doing their work. However, we're doing our best to maintain the level of activity with UD. Today we have two guests with very unique backgrounds, two smart young professionals who have achieved a dream of many people, including myself, actually, which is going to the top U.S. colleges, right? Valera and Umid Usmanov, whom I've reached out to separately, and they turned out to be friends and companions, and they're here with us today to talk about their journey. So everyone, stay tuned, and it's going to be a great conversation, I bet. Valera is a graduate of Yale-NUS College, which is located in Singapore, I believe, and the founder of Freshman Academy, based in Tashkent, right? And a company that prepares Central Asian students for Ivy League admissions. Valera's vision is to facilitate substantial Central Asian representation in the top universities by creating clubs and student organizations. Umid Usmanov is a rising junior at Yale University, which is based in New Haven, if I'm not mistaken, Connecticut, right next to New York. He's majoring in economics and global affairs, and he's in his third year of Chinese language study in the U.S. Very interesting backgrounds. Thank you guys for taking the time on your weekend to participate in the UD interview series. I do appreciate it, and I do admire the fact that you guys are putting so much time and effort in helping students in their academic journey. Knowledge is power, and the knowledge you get at Ivy League colleges such as Yale is top knowledge, I believe, right? So previously, I interviewed students from Uzbekistan who went to Harvard, Columbia, and Johns Hopkins. We can observe that the number of students from Uzbekistan who are going to, who are coming to the U.S., not only for regular colleges but top universities, is rising, and it's phenomenal. And you guys' role in this rise in numbers is undeniable. So again, thank you and welcome to our virtual stage. Such a long intro. How are you guys doing today? Valera, let's start with you today.
Thank you so much and for this introduction and for having us here. And it's a big privilege to be here among some of the most, I guess, utmost professionals in the Uzbek diaspora. It's a big privilege. But yeah, all good. I'm based in Singapore right now. I guess it's the late. It's in terms of the timing. It should be 11 a.m. or so in your place, 11 p.m. in my place. Sumit is based in Uzbekistan right now in Samarkand. So yeah, good to be in this to share this virtual stage with you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it's 11 p.m. out there. Maybe should have been a little bit considerate. But we just got used to, having our interviews at 11 a.m. EST because it works for a lot of people in
Of course,
Uzbekistan
yes.
as well as people in the U.S. and Europe. But yeah, we'll be thoughtful next time. Umid, how you doing?
Very good, Hasanka. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Just as Valera said, it's a great privilege to be here because I've been following Uzbek diaspora for quite a long time. And it's, nice to be on this side of the screen right now and
Yeah,
to be actually participating and talking to you.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm doing very well. I'm in Samarkand now, but I'm flying also, leaving the country very soon. Yeah, very excited.
Awesome, awesome. It must be very hot in Samarkand at the moment, no? Isn't it?
It was, yeah. So as I said earlier, I sort of it was a very hot car ride from Tashkent to Samarkand, which we took today. Extremely hot, but it's okay.
I'm glad that you made it on time. You just told me that you just arrived 5 minutes ago, so good job, good job. Uh,
Thank
you know, to warm up our conversation, I'd like to start with five blitz questions that have nothing to do with with today's subject, basically. So take it easy and give us short answers if possible. We'll start with Valera and Umid follows. Uh, okay, tell me the weirdest thing about yourself that you have discovered lately.
The weirdest thing about myself that I discovered lately.
I'm sure it's an unexpected question, but you get an answer.
Okay, all right. So this one is very topical, and I guess a lot of people would relate to again this topic because it was everywhere. So as you know, there were these two movies, Oppenheimer and Barbie,
Hmm.
and I went to both. And I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan. So I went to Oppenheimer first, and then I went to watch Barbie. And it's again, I don't want to start an internet war on that, but I enjoyed Barbie more more than Oppenheimer. So I don't know to what extent would you want to watch the rest of the interview after that revelation, but I really enjoyed the Barbie movie. Would advise all of you, to all of the viewers, to give it a shot. So I guess I would go with that one.
Got it. Got it. It's a good start. Good start. I watched one of them, Oppenheimer, but I really liked it. But it didn't meet my expectations, to be honest. But
It's just a lot of dialogue, right? 3 hours.
yeah, for real. I mean,
Yeah, well, I haven't watched either yet, which is a big crime. I do know that, and I'm really hoping to watch Oppenheimer very soon. I'll think about Barbie. I guess I'll have to talk to Valera first about before making that decision. But the weirdest thing about me, I think it's not weird, but it is very weird in the Uzbek context. I think having spent 2 years in the U.S.
hmm,
I stopped sort of drinking tea much, which this is something that I did a lot before going to Yale, and this was my favorite beverage. But now, whenever I have like food, I get water, and everyone is surprised, like how can you drink water with food? You drink tea with food. But I just I think I lost it for a while, but I hope to gain it back.
got it. Got it. Cool. Cool. Tea is essential. I
Yeah,
know there's a lot of like big fans of coffee, but I always admire tea.
yeah.
There's so many kinds of tea as opposed to coffee. So I know a lot of people may attack me on this, but it's what it is. What's the maximum number of push-ups you can do at the moment, Valera?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked that because it's a perfect timing to ask this question. Because I just started doing jujitsu 4 months ago, and before that 4 months, I actually gained 4 or 5 kilos. I used to be much leaner before that, and that's just a part of my plan to become more, I guess, just more fit. And especially after graduating from college, college took a toll on me with how hard, I guess, I mean, it's just a college experience. So I
Mhm.
think, I mean, it's still not that impressive, but I would say I would be able to do 25 if I push myself, maybe 35. Like it's nothing. I guess some of the viewers would be able to top that. But yeah, if you asked me that 4 months ago, that would be a different answer.
Got it. Got it. That's more than enough. I guess 25 push-ups. I don't think I'll be able to do it. How about yourself, Umid?
Well, if you asked me that question 3 years ago, when I was involved, when I was still doing boxing here in Samarkand, I would tell you that I don't know, that I did like 40, maybe like
Mhm.
35, 40.
Oh
But
my.
now I do
Oh my.
now I do 20. Now I do 20, and I wonder actually if I will do 20, but I think I'll do 20. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. The next one. What's one superpower you'd like to possess and why?
That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one.
Being able to
Um,
read people's mind or talking to animals, and there's some examples for you. What would be yours?
I think the superpower that I miss the most is just being, I guess, I mean, it might again sound, but just rationality. Sometimes I feel like as an entrepreneur, where I'm driven by emotion a lot, by big dreams and visions, and sometimes you're just not being rational. You're just doing stuff because of your passion. Like for example, I just take more work than I can. Yeah, like rationality is a big superpower. Like it's so undervalued. So I would just go with just being rational. I don't know to what extent it can be, but yeah, like the rational thinking in times of great euphoria and other emotions.
Very interesting. We'll definitely tap into that rationality aspect of you. All right, Hamid, what about you? We might have lost him temporarily. Hopefully, he'll be back. and be able to answer our questions. Let's give him maybe 20 seconds. Let's see what
Yeah.
comments we're getting so far. Yeah, you're back.
Can you
Okay,
hear?
perfect. Yeah, you're back now. There you go. Go ahead. Can you hear me now?
I think yes. I think I would say, I want to be able to control time. I would really appreciate the opportunity to, be able to like stop the type for a while and just enjoy the things that I like doing a lot. So, time doesn't tick, but I still keep doing it. Or, it's the opposite. When I have a very, very urgent deadline at the university and I have to submit my essay, I have to finish those 5 pages. I think being able to like stop the time and finish the work would be a great superpower.
Very interesting. Where's it coming from? Is it does it mean that you're always busy, that you don't have enough time for fun, or what? Where's that coming from?
After I moved to the US, I felt like 24 hours in a day were just not enough. And
Nice.
it's just a lot is going on. And in general, sort of after I moved to the US, a lot of things started to happen, and sort of freshmen started growing very, very quickly. And, everything is happening and you want to be involved everywhere, but you cannot, because as Valera said, sometimes things get a little bit irrational.
Right,
Uh,
right. Very interesting, actually. A lot of people say like time flies in the U.S. Is it true though? I mean, is it the same thing in Singapore? Doesn't it feel like time flies, like when you're working a lot?
Oh yeah, I mean, yesterday I wrestled with this 15-year-old kid, and I was like, wow, we have a 9-year difference, and I was like, wow, that is just fascinating. That is just fascinating. And when you stand there and you're like, give him like life advice and everything, and you're like, wow, like I was this 15-year-old. Seems like yesterday,
Yeah, you
but yeah,
feel old,
time
right?
does fly. Time does
Yeah,
fly, unfortunately.
yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. The fourth question that we have here, on a scale of 1 to 10, how successful are you and why?
Oh, success, like for me, is just being content and just being, just happy. I would say 10 out of 10 for that. And I guess externally, whatever people, I don't care about that much, but I
Mhm.
care about just kind of the feeling that I have for what I'm doing, and I'm just 10 out of 10 happy with what I'm doing, the place that I'm at, and I do objectively understand that there are people who do more, there are people who are further at the same age. I just had a person from Singapore today who graduated from Gimo, and we're peers with him. So he wrote a book in his age. He's writing articles for like the Diplomat, for some major publications. I'm like, wow, that is very impressive stuff. And but still, I would not want to choose the career paths or lives of anyone who I know or anyone. Yeah, I'm just very content about what I'm doing. So I would say in that sense, it's 10 out of 10. But again, objectively, obviously, there are people who do so much more and so much more successful in whatever dimension we can think of.
Sounds good. So you're living up to your blueprint, right? Is that what it is? That means like you have your set of expectations and you're meeting them. That's
Yeah,
very
it's just being a little bit, I guess, thinking in the long term, obviously, but also having your milestones and understanding where you're coming from and some of the limitations that come from that. I'm not a big fan of the self-help books that say, "Oh, you can do it." You are. I understand that there is obviously the social setting where that you're born into, and I think given all those factors, I feel like I'm doing quite well. And but yeah, it's you will never be perfect, I guess, but
absolutely, yeah. I can see you're, not only taking in but putting out a lot of useful like value for people, especially on social media. We'll definitely tap into that as well. And let's ask the same question, Umid. What is your answer?
I do agree with Valera in that regard, that I think success is just how you feel about your day, how you feel daily, like how you feel about, waking up today and sort of, just tackling, the tasks that you have during the day. And I feel like on that scale, I'm somewhere on a 6 or 7, because I think there's in just I think in my life there is always like there's things that I can do better. There are some things that I'm not. So I feel like I'm not doing enough, and there are some thoughts that just keep me up like constantly, like at night. Things like what will happen sort of in the next months, what will happen in the next year,
Right.
or how I can plan things right. And of course, you never plan things right. There are always some things that do not go according to the plan, but you always keep thinking about the projects that you're involved in, and about your academic life, and just everything. So I would say it's a 7, but I really really strive to achieve what Valera has right now. So like I hope I'm on my way there.
So what's your number? What is
6, 7, or something
six,
like
7
that.
out of 10? Nice, nice, nice. Sounds good,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I like the way Valera thinks mostly like positively, right? Being able to being able to enjoy what you have and being able to control what you can control and just leaving things that you can't control, right? Is that what it is? Uh, and let's see. I think we have another question. Uh, the last question: if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? I
Oh,
can.
that one,
Kind
I know I know it's boring, but I will say it because it's true. We'll go with truth today, not with clicks, and I guess yeah, it would just be apples. I'm a big fan of apples, both the tech company, and I understand that this might be controversial in itself, and the fruits themselves, but I'm a big apple fan, so I'll go with apples.
Sounds good. Umid?
Um, I would go with watermelons. I love watermelons, and summer. Uh,
I think the connection is not as good.
any of
Umid, could
them, and
you
you
hear us?
eat
Uh,
them, enjoy them. Especially,
there you go. I think you're back.
okay, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You said watermelon. Let's talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying. Yeah, watermelons are one of the reasons why I love summers, especially in Uzbekistan, because there's just so many of them.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Cool. You should try some watermelon juice as well. They're very good.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Thanks for the answers. I highly encourage our audience to be more active by leaving comments and questions on the chats. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, we're able to pull up the questions and bring it to our speaker's attention. And alrighty, let's start tapping into the childhood that you guys had, some childhood stories, teenagehood, school years, education, upbringing. If you could maybe sum it up briefly. And again, let's start with Valera.
Valera, we cannot hear you. Or is
Oh,
it
sorry,
just me?
again, rookie mistake. I mean, I have
Oh,
not
look,
been teaching for quite a while. Yeah, talking was a muted mic. Hasanka, can you specify again? So what just any childhood
well,
stories or
it's
uh,
not necessarily a childhood story, but the story of your childhood in general, and
mm,
transition to teenagehood, school years, education, your upbringing,
mm,
what shaped you to become who you are at the moment, and
mm,
education. Maybe you could tap into some important crucial moments that took place in your childhood, and some things that shaped your identity and help you become Valera today. If you could sum it
interesting.
up, everything. Yeah.
Interesting. Today's session reminds me of the kinds of sessions that we hold with our students when we try to help them communicate their stories. So we typically start with the social setting. We start with the family because that's the easiest way
Right.
to start. So in my case, I was born in Samarkand, lived in Samarkand all the way till my admission to Yale-NUS. Um, I think to a large extent, my grandparents influenced me in their own ways. My grandmother on my mom's side, she's an English teacher, and she was this prominent English teacher in the Soviet Union, very strict. And then she was creating methodologies that were then, I guess, disseminated across Uzbekistan. So I think the English side came from her, and a lot of influences in terms of being interested in, I guess, that kind of education abroad also partly was from her. My grandmother on my father's side, she was the director of a theater, so I spent quite a bit of time there, just talking to actors, like being in that creative arts environment. My father is he's an artist himself, and my mom is a guide, so I spent a lot of time. So when I was young, she would bring me on her trips across Uzbekistan. So I would learn a lot about Uzbek history, and also would hold discussions with some of the people who visit Uzbekistan. And it's quite interesting that this is changing, but it used to be the case that people would discover Uzbekistan only as their 80th country or like 95th country, and then still after going to all these countries and then having just they just maybe it's just ticking the box, that, oh, I traveled to Uzbekistan, but they became really, I felt that they were mind blown by what Uzbekistan had to offer after traveling to so many countries. So I guess my appreciation for Uzbekistan, for our culture, also came from this objective, I mean, as objective as you can get view from those people who came after visiting basically the entire world. And that helped me see a lot of uniqueness in what our country has to offer. So I think that is coming from there. Also, a lot of them were professors. So I remember some of the talks when I was 12, 14, with professors from, say, Oxford, Harvard, who were coming to Uzbekistan, and again, were part of my mom's tourist groups. So I had that exposure, and obviously, like my grandfathers too. They were teaching me slightly different things. I guess one was sort of this day-to-day inventor. He was just inventing stuff. Like if something didn't work, he would just he would just fix it, or he would. And the other was very family-oriented. So I guess it was just my childhood was very, very happy because my parents allowed me to do anything and experiment with my activities. Like one day I wanted to learn how to play guitar, and then tomorrow I had a guitar in my house, and then I would kind of give it up in 2-3 months. Then the day after tomorrow I would want to play soccer, and then I played soccer for 2 years and I kind of dropped it. But whatever that I ventured in, I felt like my parents supported me in that. So I felt like that was a big factor in my upbringing.
Very interesting. So basically, your grandparents had a big impact on you, and also a lot of professors kind of guided you, to find the way that you have at the moment, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so. It's just also, again, studying abroad was such a far-fetched dream at the beginning,
Hmm.
and having those professors, be there, very close to you, talk about education there. I
Yeah.
think that was a strong boost because it's not just a dream, but it's something that you can kind of tap into and experience in a moment. So I think that what really solidified um, that desire to discover more beyond my city that I'm very attached to. I'm a big fan of Samarkand. I have lots of friends there. I love to be back home, but it's also, I guess, it's kind of dual. Like on the one hand, being rooted, on the other hand, wanting to explore beyond. So yeah.
Sounds good. Very interesting. Yeah, I know Samarkand has a lot of cultural treasures, and when I talk to a lot of foreigners about Uzbekistan, the first name they usually have in mind is Samarkand, right? Because of the history it has, and it's great. But even though I've never visited, I know a lot about Samarkand and its history. Uh, and I see that we're receiving some questions from a lot of people. I don't want to be ignorant. Let's bring it up. The Rabah Tosheva. Hello, I'm very new at Yale. How to connect with other Uzbek people here? Uh, how can they connect with you, Umid, and your team, please?
Well, first of all, I'm very, very happy. First of all, congratulations that you are at Yale, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a big holiday when for us, especially when there is someone from Uzbekistan, and you can connect definitely with us. You can connect with me. We're running. We'll definitely talk about it. But just recently, like a year ago, we started the first Central Asian Club at Yale, student led, and we're organizing events. So we'll definitely be very happy to meet you there and to connect you with other students from Uzbekistan and from Central Asia in general.
Awesome. So I think this is coming from LinkedIn. So maybe you want to send a connection and then, take it from there, start chatting and, that's good. It's good to have a sense of community at Yale among Uzbek students. I see another question here that I missed. Assalamu alaikum. What is the topic today? What is the topic today? What are we talking about? I think we're talking about Valera and Umid and their educational journey at Yale. So that's pretty much it. And let's see what else we have. All right, we'll definitely bring him up. Let's talk about you, Umid. What can you say about your childhood and the transition to teenagehood and your education and your upbringing? What are some of the important things that happened that shaped who you are?
Mm-hmm. I think in my case, my parents definitely had a lot of influence on me, especially my mother, because my mom used to be this person who I did sort of all of my elementary school homework with. She was very strict as well, and sort of, they were definitely the rules that all of us, all of her children, I have two older brothers who followed them. And for some reason, my mom decided to sort of change something, she decided to sign me up for English language classes.
Mhm.
And I have two older brothers. They're both doctors. My parents are also doctors. So all of them are doctors, all except for me. And I decided to take a different path. But when I was 6 years old, so I was about to go to school, and we had a neighbor who went to sort of the local Institute of Foreign Languages. And my mom made a decision. She was like, okay, maybe he'll find it useful later in life, but let me just pay the tutor. I don't know, it was like 5,000 sums per session back in those days. And she will she will teach him the alphabet. And I started, and I never stopped since then. So since I was 6 years old, and I sort of had a lot of teachers. By the way, Valera's grandmother was one of my English teachers, and up until I think the ninth grade, for like 9 years, I think I attended sort of English language classes just because my mom wanted me to attend the classes.
Mhm.
And I personally saw sort of no big use. It's just it became a part of my life to always have English language classes and just go there. And my mom had an idea that someday he might need English, and he will sort of thank me later, as she says it now. And then sometime around the 9th, 10th grade, I think I discovered a different sort of way of learning English. I started like enjoying the whole process, and the whole sort of pleasure from the process came from just the thought that now I reached the level of sort of the language when I can read books in English, when I can watch movies in English. And I found it very, very interesting because I didn't have to watch the translated versions sort of movies, or like read translated versions of the books, but I could read the original. And that idea excited me a lot. And I think sort of that was a sort of a turning point when I tried to cling on every opportunity to watch or read something in its original language, or to just meet with someone on Registan Square, because as Valera said, we had a lot of foreigners, and we still do, coming and sort of seeing the city. And I would sort of appreciate every opportunity to just go there and practice my speaking. And so most of my childhood was sort of just a regular childhood of a regular sort of person, but just with English. And something that I think was different in my childhood than what my brothers had was I had more independence in some ways, because I knew that I had a different path. I knew that I didn't want to be a doctor. I just didn't find it very exciting. Although I do love what my parents, what my brothers are doing, but I just never felt like I could do that as well. And because I was going on a different path, my parents always used to tell me, we don't know what you're doing, We don't know what will happen with you in like 2 to 3 years, but we hope you're doing the right thing. So we trust you. We will sort of give you everything you want. We'll give you the time. If you need the money, we'll give you the money. Again, in rational terms, right? They'll of course not give me like like $300,000 to go to Yale,
Right.
but they were like, we'll give you everything we can give, but you just do the right thing, and we hope you're sort of choosing the right way, sort of you're going along the right path. And so I do appreciate the trust that they have, that they gave me. And everything could have gone wrong, of course, but I'm happy that sort of we're here where we're now today.
Awesome. Wow. Wow. What a story. Very interesting. So your parents have always been supportive, even though you didn't choose their path, right? Which is being in medicine. And so you're the youngest kid in your family, right? Is that what it is?
The youngest, also you can say the most relatively more spoiled than the others, also relatively more protected sort of than the others. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably why your parents gave you a little bit more independence, because they knew
That
that you got the
is
others
true.
already in medicine, and
That is
so
true.
that's good, man. It's good. It's always the same thing with the young what do you call it, siblings. They have a little bit more freedom, and parents love them more, I guess. Like give them a little bit more attention. It doesn't mean they don't love others, but I mean that's just the reality. All right, awesome. And your parents always been supportive, and they provided resources that you needed. And English has always been very important for you. And you mentioned that like at some point you start enjoying learning English. I think it's just a thing with learning the languages, right? That you achieve a certain threshold, and when you get to that threshold, everything becomes easy. So that's probably when you were at your ninth and 10th grade, I guess, right? It's pretty early for someone to learn English at that level where you can communicate already. It's awesome. All right. So many questions. Toshova again send another comment here. Postdoc associate and a lecturer at Yale. I'll be teaching a course on Central Asian art history in spring semester. Wow. It's very impressive. Please contact me at Toshova. Happy to be part of Central Asian community at Yale. That's awesome. It's awesome. So there's some synergy there that you can take advantage.
I just sent you a LinkedIn sort of connection. Let's
I
definitely
already
talk.
did. You're more
Same. I did it a couple of minutes ago. So yeah, let's connect.
You guys are talking to me, or you guys are sitting on LinkedIn or what? I'm just kidding. All right. Let's see if there's any other relevant comments here. Okay. All right. All right. Somebody else is saying Susanna G. The Toshva. I'll email you shortly. She's probably tell us about yourself and give us a little bit more detail. Umid, a question for you. What are you going to study at Tsinghua University, and why specifically did you choose Tsinghua for a study away? And how was your experience with application and everything?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could tap into it a little bit.
Yeah. That is a very good question, and I think I made one of the most sort of important decisions recently in my sort of career in college. I decided to take a gap year, and it will be a gap year between my sophomore and junior years. And this is a common practice, as it turns out, in the U.S. to do.
Mhm,
And I figured that I want to take this year off in order to continue explore my interests and sort of take advantage of all the resources that Yale has to offer. And
mhm,
one of the resources that Yale has is something called the Light Fellowship, which is basically the fellowship or the money
mhm,
that the university gives you to use and sort of go to one of the three countries in East Asia. It can be either Korea, South Korea, Japan, or China. And when I first came to Yale, something that I learned was I had to take a language, sort of a new like a foreign language. We have a language requirement, and I decided to go with the hardest one. I decided to pick Chinese, and sort of try and see where it will take me. And I spent 4 semesters learning Chinese. I decided to apply for the Light Fellowship. I got it. And I applied for a program at Tsinghua because the program in Tsinghua specifically is considered to be one of the most intensive, but also the most interesting. So one of the best ones in China. And the fellowship, it basically covers everything for the entire year. So all the costs, including airfare, tuition, accommodation, food. And so I figured that, okay, I'll use this year. I'll use the resources that the university gives me, and I just will improve my sort of Chinese language skills. And I'll also have the opportunity to take classes at Tsinghua, and Tsinghua is considered one of the best, if not the best, university in China. So I'll continue to explore my interests there, explore the culture, and also try to build, a diaspora there. Because sort of I've already started doing something in New Haven at Yale, and maybe we can figure something out at Tsinghua in Beijing as well. So yeah, that's why Tsinghua, that's why China and Chinese.
Very interesting. Wow. Chinese is probably one of the hardest languages, especially when it comes to like pronunciation and everything. I took a class actually in one semester, and I picked up a few phrases and learned a few characters, and I just realized that grammar is not that difficult, to be honest. Simple, but then when it comes to pronunciation, like
Mhm.
one sound, one word can, one, what do you call it, letter can have different sounds, and they can have different meanings. Is very complicated. So I kind of eventually gave up, but I still would love to learn Chinese. Maybe at some point in the future, I'll be able to practice it with you when you get to a certain level. Yeah,
Let's do it. Let's do it, Hasanaka. That is true. One letter can mean 4 different things.
sure.
And the first time I learned this, it was a big discovery. Well, it wasn't a big discovery, but I sort of expected it. But there is a sort of a joke that we have, in our classes at Yale. There's this letter called ma, and you can pronounce it ma, and you can pronounce it like differently, like ma.
Yeah,
And one means mother, the other means horse. So you're walking on a very, very thin sort of hair. Yeah, so it's hard.
yeah, yeah. Sounds good. And mention it one more time. Where is the university located? What part of China?
It's in Beijing.
Uh-huh. It's in Beijing. And you took the Chinese course for like 4 semesters. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I took it for 4 semesters, so that's like almost 2 years, and I'm at an intermediate level of Chinese now.
Oh wow, wow, wow! That's awesome. And what is your goal? Like, do you want to be fluent in Chinese as you're fluent in English and other languages? Is that what it is?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm deciding to take a gap year and to spend it
Mhm.
in China and to perfect sort of my language skills. Yeah.
Okay, and why Chinese again? Like, is it because it's a dominant language, or what is the most important motivation?
Um,
Chinese?
I think there are several reasons why I picked Chinese in the first place when I first came. First of all, when I first came, I had a lot of friends who spoke Chinese,
Mhm.
and so they encouraged me to take Chinese. Second, Chinese is just the sort of the Chinese language department is the best language department on campus. And third, I think yeah, it's just a lot of use in it.
Mhm.
And in the future, just like my mom did with me, like 15 years ago, that this kid might need English in the future. So is with Chinese. I think it might be of some use sometime in the future.
Right, right, right. Gotcha. Yeah. Sorry, I might be a little distracted because I'm focused on our plan at the same time, reading comments. So don't look at me. So look at our guests. My eyes are everywhere. So okay, awesome. Let's ask a few questions. Valera, we know that you're a founder of Freshman Academy. And that's just a organization or a company. Is that a nonprofit organization or a profit for-profit organization? What is that?
We started off with offering all the courses for free,
Mhm.
and quickly, I mean, in 2 years, I realized that it was just, so our CT courses, they were not free, but they were quite affordable, around $56 per month. We did not change the prices since then, since we started 4 years ago. But our admission support was initially free. Then
Mhm.
we started charging something for it. And I just realized that um, on the one, there was just very little accountability, and it just didn't work out doing that kind of work for free. Students
Right.
didn't take the meeting seriously, and then for us, just doing all this bulk of work. But it's very unfortunate that in today's world, people equate prices with value. And
Yeah.
if it's free, it, and just one example, we offer weekly free classes in this program called Education Lab at Freshman. It's very interesting that we have less people
Yeah.
attending those free classes than our paid classes,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is just, again, maybe it's that the people, they're conditioned to thinking of free, meaning that this is promotional stuff, very little value, and then we'll be selling something there,
Yeah.
which is not the case because we're investing in it. So we're a for-profit organization, but again, we try to help as much as possible with when it comes to kids who cannot afford our courses. But a lot of what we're doing is very, very expensive. For example, we had to hire a doctor, a professor, to help us out with, teaching students to do research and to write. And it's quite a bit of resources that goes into that. We have a team that needs to be also supported financially. A lot of them are part-time, work at Freshman part-time. So we have about 25, 26 people right now working part-time. Some of them work full-time, so including myself. But yeah, so it's a for-profit organization, but we try to keep, again, the prices within
Mm.
keep the prices reasonable. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I mean, there's no sense of guilt when you say it's a for-profit organization, and most of the like top universities in the U.S. You have to pay top dollars, right, to get into them, and to be able to maintain your education there. You have to pay a lot of money. Of course, they offer scholarships, but yeah, it's awesome. What you guys have been doing is amazing. And again, I was a little sneaky, and I just tapped into some of the details of your organization. Freshman Academy prepares high school students for admission to the world's top universities with partial or full scholarship. Freshman Academy was founded in 2019 by a team of Yale and US students. Since then, freshmen graduates were admitted to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, Stanford, Berkeley, Babson, and many more. Wow, all the well-known universities. And your mission is not just to prepare students for IELTS and SAT, or help write motivational essays, right? A freshman, you guys are nurturing the next generation of world leaders in politics, economics, humanities, arts, and sciences. It's awesome. Let's tap into it more. How did you come up with the idea? And I know that you were accepted to. Let's start with this. Okay, let's stay on track. You got accepted to Yale-NUS, right? And how did it happen? And why Yale-NUS, not other schools?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story in itself. Back in the day when I was applying, there were very few resources that were available to Uzbek students. So
Mhm.
for a population of, back then we had 36 million people, we
Mhm.
had one SAT test center in Tashkent, and then we had about 15 students on every exam,
Mhm.
on every SAT exam. So essentially, and most of them were from Tashkent International School, from just a few private schools that existed, and most of them were international, not Uzbek students.
Mhm.
So I learned about need blind admissions early on. And for those of you who don't know about need blind admissions, for the audience, it's this policy that when you apply to, say, Yale and Harvard and some top schools, and you cannot pay for your education, you will be considered in the same um, in the same way as those who can pay for their education. And then when you get in to places like Yale or Harvard,
Mhm.
they actually pledge to cover the cost of your education that your parents cannot cover. So
Mhm.
that's something that I always kept in mind. A lot of people around me were poking fun at me and and were saying that, what are you talking about? Why would universities? And I mean, we can have hold a separate discussion on why this is the case. And there's a lot of nuances there. But ultimately, I had this trust and belief that this is actually possible and doable. But again, I didn't know almost anything about the process. At first, I didn't even know that I need to take the SATs. I got IELTS and was very fortunate to get an 8 on my first try, again, back in the day. So I thought that would be enough to,
Yeah.
and again, we have this, for some reason, idealization, and still that exists, of people who hold like IELTS certificates. I mean, we can talk about that too. But in any case, so I applied to Yale, Harvard, all the top schools in my first year. And then I was very confident that they would want to have the first Uzbek citizen. So in many of those universities, there have never been Uzbek citizens, or at that point, there were no Uzbek citizens there. There were, of course, a lot of Uzbek people ethnically who were either born in the US or studied in the US and then transitioned. So I was like, hey, I inherently have an advantage because of that diversity aspect. I get rejected from every school that I apply for in my first year, like every single school. And that was a reality check. But then I was just very fortunate that one of the projects that I worked at in the College of Light Industry and Economy in Samarkand, we were selected as the finalists in the UN competition. We got paid to basically go to Geneva and present our project on the big stage. There, out of 5 projects, we got the last place. But because we were just 17, 18-year-olds, my friend and I, the Israeli delegation was saying, hey, you have an interesting idea. We'll pay you to go to Israel. Then I stayed in Jerusalem for another 2 months. And while I got all these rejections, I did all these trips. And then my life was literally, from one event, from one business trip to another business trip. And then I realized that I would want to reapply. And I reapplied. And I remember 21st of March, it was Navruz. And it happened so that I represented Armenian youth in Samarkand for one of those events. And then Shavkat Mirziyoyev, our president, was passing by me. We shook hands, and then I made this joke like, "Oh, I got the blessing, this year." And then in 2 days after that meeting, in the morning I get the notification that Yale-NUS admitted me. In the afternoon, I learned that Amherst College admitted me. And then in the evening, I applied to this MUN competition in Kazakhstan. They rejected me initially, and they sent me this email saying, hey, it was actually a mistake that you got rejected. You're indeed, admitted. So I remember this day quite.
It all happened on the same day.
Yeah, so all of that happened a couple of days, if not on the next day after that Navruz celebration. I think it might have been even the next day. So
tell us about the emotions you had.
That was just I was honestly almost immediately disenchanted, because it was such a high intensity moment, like all these 2 years explaining everyone that I'm not just chasing something in the chasing some cloud vision. It was really, really tough. I took SATs 6 times because there were no teachers. I took 1 time SAT subjects, but 5 times I just improved my score every time. And it was just a very long journey. And when I got in, obviously there's this euphoric feeling of relief. But at the same time, something in you is, it's not, I don't even know how to explain it. I don't know, Umid, if you agree with me or not, but I'm seeing that in a lot of our students too. It's sort of when they get admitted, it's almost like, it's euphoric for 2-3 days. And then you're like, oh, now I have visas. Now I actually need to study now. And then it goes down really fast, like really, really fast. And that's something that we were telling our students a lot. It's like, you work for it a lot, and then it happens, and then what do I do with my life? Because all of my life was basically SATs, my project, and then writing essays and all of that. And then from then on, everything was changing. So and at that point, I realized that something needs to be done. That there's so many opportunities out there that we're not tapping into. But I also realized that there are some fundamentally different skills and fundamentally different insights that need to be in that successful mix of your application that just did not exist at the time. Perhaps they existed in Kazakhstan because, again, they had already the strategy worked out from Nazarbayev schools to Olympiads to top universities. In Uzbekistan, it was not the case at all. So that's how the idea of freshman came up. Then first year I was basically surviving because I studied 3 years in college. Then I had a gap year. So basically all these 4 years, I wouldn't say that I was really that academically involved. And then I came coming to college, and then suddenly you need to write thousands of words of essays, just a different ball game. So first year it was just survival, and then second year, in this mid sophomore year, I was like, okay, it's the time to start offering SAT classes, helping out students for free, and learning more about the process, because there was a feeling that there was so much that I did not know about the process. So that's the quick, I guess, description of
Wow.
of that journey.
So much to uncover here. Wow, that's that. I can imagine how much like emotions, how much, like, what do you call it, adrenaline you were feeling on that second,
Exactly.
and being accepted to so many top universities at the same time. Like, I imagine, like, I studied at a university in the U.S., and I was pretty much happy to be accepted to an average university, and you know you were in different shoes, so it's yeah, I can't even imagine that. That's awesome. And it's interesting to notice that people at the beginning didn't trust you, right? They said a lot of negative things, like, hey, what are you trying to do?
Yeah, yeah.
And-
When people were saying, "Oh, like, do you want to get in Hogwarts or something? Like, where are you applying?" and
yeah,
stuff like that. But it's very natural. Like, I cannot blame them because there were no any examples. Like, nobody was doing that.
yeah,
So, what exactly was I doing? But again, I don't know where it was coming from. I
yeah,
just realized that that just I wanted to push myself, and if it didn't work out, I had my plan B. I was thinking, all right, maybe Westminster University in Tashkent, maybe some other options. Like, I would not apply again if I got rejected that year. That's for sure. So it was like, okay, I'm trying one more year. Doesn't work out, it's fine. I'll just move on and do something and go somewhere else.
right, right. Very interesting. And I'm imagining the volume of essays you had to write. I studied at what do you call, one of the New York universities, and the amount of essays we had to write was a lot. And I'm imagining how much essays you had to write at the top university. Um, Also, I don't want to get distracted. I see a lot of comments and questions coming up. Suzanne has been very active in our comment section. I'm starting a nonprofit organization, Central Asian Girls Education Fund, bridging borders, building future. We want to empower girls and women in Central Asia through educational fund. We should partner. There you go. There's some partnership offers coming up for you guys.
Yeah, I'll just mention here that we had three of our students, um, girls who got admitted into. So one got admitted to Harvard, the other to Columbia and Stanford this year. Am I missing someone? I think. Wait,
Mhm.
Harvard,
Yeah.
Columbia, Stanford, and we had a bunch of other schools too. We're very invested in enabling those kinds of resources. We often hold discussions with parents, and their concerns are also understandable. Who are concerned about their daughters going abroad, and it's a long process, and it's working with a lot of parties and just making sure that it's it would of course be sad if someone who could study at Harvard or at Yale or at some top school would
Yeah.
not do that because their parents would be concerned. But again, we do understand where the parents are coming from, and a lot of those concerns are reasonable. So we're working with parents a lot in that regard. And Susanna, feel free to connect, and we can talk more about this. I feel like it's a lot more. It's not really that straightforward as it may seem, and it's a sensitive topic for a lot of parents, and we just try to be as understanding of their position, of the parents' position too, but again, just enabling as many opportunities as possible.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's one of the things that's very core to what we're doing, enabling educational resources to all sorts of people who previously did not have access to those resources, and it might be because of, again, gender, It might be because of the geographic location. We can talk about some of the cases too, of those students who got admitted from freshmen. It's not, again, it's not just having someone from Uzbekistan getting admitted to Harvard or Yale. It's also someone who maybe is coming from a place from Uzbekistan that place was not represented. And that's something that we're, like, for example, Umid is coming from Samarkand, Rustam, the second student. So every year, basically, we had a student who got admitted to Yale from freshman from Uzbekistan. So it was Umid. Next year it was Rustam, and Rustam is coming from Karakalpakstan, and he was coming from a public school there. And we had our last student Murad. He's coming from Bakhmal region in Jizakh. So again, most of the resources are centralized in Tashkent. There is a feeling, but it's good that people from very different backgrounds represent our country, and makes our country feel so multidimensional. And for example, from what I understand, he's very much involved in the discussions of, say, water resources in Uzbekistan, raising those topics on very high levels, potentially facilitating the work between top professors and Uzbekistan in terms of, addressing those issues. Umid is bringing a lot. Murad will be bringing a lot too on the table. So that's very much the vision. Because if you go to Harvard and Yale, what you would find is that still the vast majority of people, obviously, they represent top private schools. They're not coming from those kinds of backgrounds. Again, it happens, but it's more of a rarer case in a sense.
Interesting. And how did it happen that you guys ended up meeting with Umid? At what point?
Yeah, Umid, do you want to share that?
What's the story behind this friendship?
So the person, I guess, who connected us back sort of like more than 5, like 8 years ago, was Valera's grandmother, who, as Valera said, was a teacher, and she taught me English. And
Wow.
she taught me English. She was very strict, as Valera said, but somehow I managed to finish the program that she had.
Yeah.
And Valera, you're 4 years older than me, right? So he was older than me. I was like 13 years old. Valera was 17 years old, and he was already sort of thinking about going, abroad and studying there. And his grandmother was like, why don't you attend his classes as well? Sort of, why don't you try them out? Because sort of Valera's classes back in those times, they were less formal. They somehow, I guess, mimicked the version of like a speaking club. So you just came there and you just discuss topics,
Right.
and that's how I met him. And that's when it all started. I think it was like 8 years ago or something. Yeah.
Interesting. And so you got accepted to Yale, right? Is there a what do you call connection between the freshman academy and you? The fact that you got accepted to Yale, like, how did it happen? How do you guys combine all these things? Like you go to Yale and there's freshman academy. That's what I'm trying to link. I'm trying to put the dots together.
Yeah. The story of our friendship started, back when I was 13 years old. So like it's 7-8 years ago. And I finished. So basically, the way it works when you learn English here in Uzbekistan, you complete all the elementary classes, you learn all the grammar possible, and then you take IELTS, you take SAT, and so on and so forth. And so I completed the grammar program with sort of Valera's grandmother, and I knew that I had to sort of, the next step was to take IELTS, and I was looking for an IELTS teacher. That's sort of when I think I attended sort of Valera's classes, and Valera's classes were not really focused on just learning IELTS. They were just focused on learning English in general, which I really liked. I really enjoyed it. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to sort of be very scared of my teacher, but I actually came to classes with great enjoyment. I knew that we would discuss something very interesting, and Valera got into Yale-NUS. Valera got into Yale-NUS, and for me that was the inspiration. For me, that was the goal. I was like, wow, Valera got into the university, because before that I thought, it's impossible. How can you go, first of all, abroad, sort of study there, and also it's very expensive. Like, even when you consider the tuition fee plus accommodation plus airfare, everything, if you want to go to Yale, everything sums up to $90,000 per year. So that's $360,000, and not sort of every family in Uzbekistan has that much money to pay for education. And Valera got it. Valera got the scholarship, and sort of that was again the inspiration. And I figured, so that was like 3.5, 4 years before my admission to Yale, and I set a goal for myself that I would do the same. I would get into university. I would also get a scholarship, be it in Singapore at Yale-NUS, be it elsewhere, be it in the US. But I will also try to sort of achieve something similar. And I was determined, for the 3.5 years before admissions, I had this goal that I would, get in and sort of realize this dream. And everything was, I think I planned out everything because I knew that I would take a gap year. I took a gap year, between 11th grade, so finishing school and going to the university. Most of my relatives, of course, they were against. My friends were very they were in shock. Like, how are you taking a gap year? What does it even mean? Because we thought, you would go somewhere, you would get a scholarship somewhere, in Tashkent, and you would just study together. You start the university together with us. And my family also sort of split into two camps. But my mom was, the one who was on my side, and she was the deciding factor. She convinced my father and my brothers that it's a risk, but we sort of signed a contract. We signed a contract. We said, okay, you will try, you will take a gap year, but if nothing works out, you're staying here in Uzbekistan, and you are going to university here in Tashkent, and that's it. That would be the end of the story. But we are giving you this 1 year to do whatever you want to do, because you've been working on this for the past 3 years, and go and do it. Yeah. And I took the year off. I worked, and the goal was to get into Yale-NUS together with Valera. And then a thought popped into my head. Why not Yale as well? Because before that, a year before that, I got into Yale Young Global Scholars, which I also learned through Valera, who learned it from the other person from Uzbekistan as well, who Valera actually founded the freshman academy with. His name is Bigzot. And Valera was like, why don't you apply to Yale Young Global Scholars just for fun, before going to college, like a year before. And sort of we did it, and I somehow got in. I was supposed to go to Yale, but COVID hit 2020, and I couldn't. So I finished the program online. And that's sort of when I got the vision. Okay, if I got into Yale Young Global Scholars, the summer school, why don't I try Yale as well, like the main campus? And I was going and doing everything right according to the plan. I took IELTS, I took SAT, and then during this whole process, sort of, I knew that I needed some guidance. I knew that I needed some help, from a person who had experienced this process before and who knows how things work, more or less. And I reached out to my old friend, Valera. I was just asking him questions, and then I still remember how I was bothering him during his exam sort of period, at college, and asking him to read my essays and sort of proofread them, help me edit them, and just guide me, like in writing, and like help me out with the applications, which was the final sort of stage, which is very important when you write essays. That's it. And then sort of I applied, and 3-4 months later, I got in.
Awesome. Wow. That's a very interesting story. Actually, again, like at the beginning, I said that I reached out to you guys separately, and I didn't know you guys are connected already. But I could have assumed you guys both from Uzbekistan, both from Samarkand, and both got accepted to Yale University, and what a small world, right? And we just decided to combine these two interviews into one, and we're talking now. It's awesome. A lot of questions in mind that I want to ask, but it's awesome. So you took one gap year, right? When you were just starting to apply for universities, right? And I feel like maybe there's something about taking a gap year, don't you think? Like taking a little bit of break, being like taking a gap year also is courageous. Like you're like having this peer pressure among your friends, like, hey, everybody got accepted to university. What am I gonna do? What others are gonna think of me? I didn't get accepted to any university, and people have this like anxiety. But you were courageous to take a gap year. You were determined that you were gonna get some good results, and you get the best result at the end of the day, right? I think I call it like pushing this. What do you call it? The gratification, like not gratification. What do you call it? You're just like basically delaying this sense of accomplishment. Like instead of saying like, "Hey, I got accepted to this university. I'm good to go. I don't have to, put so much energy and effort. I'm satisfied." Instead of being complacent, you just kept going. You just kept working. And then eventually you got the best results, and I'm sure your parents and all your friends are proud of you, both of you. I mean, and I see some questions are coming up. There you go. Jahangir Mamajanov. Hello, it's great to join this event. I'm also a graduate from the U.S. University. May I know how I can prepare my 16-year-old son to start preparing for Yale? What's the path for the preparation? Thank you. I think we can expand this question a little bit more and tap into the details of how you, Valera and Umid, help at Freshman Academy students to get accepted to top universities such as Harvard, Yale, and all of those. What are some of the secrets, if you don't mind sharing?
So I guess we can start with first the numbers, and then we can share all the secrets behind those numbers. I think we can just shake up our
numbers of like students, or what numbers?
So first was the number of students.
Yes,
for our program that we supported students individually last year, we admitted 12 students into that program. 4 of them ended up in the IVs. 3 of them ended up in the IVs with full scholarships, to the point where their flights were covered. So it's food, accommodation, flights, and a $7,000 stipend per year. So essentially, $7K per year of a stipend. Umid, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 7,000, right, at Yale.
So they changed the policy, unfortunately.
It's across 4 years, or
they give you 7,000 in your first year, and then they give you 3.5 in your last semester. So that's like 10,000 across 4 years.
Okay, I mean, in any case, it's a university paying you essentially to attend the university, with all the flights covered and food covered, all of that. So these numbers are essentially unprecedented. So that's why I want to bring this model outside and then test it out in Singapore and work in some other regions. So what's behind this? What's behind this is our biggest insight that if you're coming from a public school, you actually have more of a chance and more resources to prepare for a university like Yale or Harvard or Ivy League. And that's very counterintuitive. That's not what people would assume. But ultimately, that proved to be true in many ways. And again, we work with some top public schools, we work with private schools too. But if you're coming from a regular public school, first, it's easier to be best there. And it turns out that Harvard and Yale and other top schools don't really differentiate between the strengths of the school as much as we thought they were. So if you're top in your school, they consider contextually your resources and how well you did with those resources. So that's number one. Number two, you actually have more free time because your schedule is not as guided for you as in a private school. So you have more free time, so you can do much more in terms of your extracurricular activities. Then everything else that the private schools allow is something where freshman comes in. So first thing that we offer is we help with reflectivity. So we make them write reflections about their life, about their interests, about people that they meet on a daily basis, what they learn from those people, and we teach them to dig deeper into the different social phenomena that's happening around them. So they start with very superficial claims, with explaining the world in terms like A causes B, and there's not that much of depth in the initial reflections. But then we push them to read into some what we call fundamental literature. So what we mean by fundamental literature is the kind of text that pushed society and humanity, our understanding of the world further. So we push them to read Hegel, we push them to read Socrates, we push them to read whatever the field that they investigate, text from that particular field, and then connect it back to their lives. A lot of that is very guided because essentially you need someone who went through 4 years of education, or at least in the process of getting Ivy League level, I guess. And again, we're so obsessed with Ivy League, not because there's inherently better about it. And again, we can talk about some of the research that has been done on this. But essentially, our obsession with Ivy League is because they have more financial aid. That's basically it. And most of our students who we work with, they cannot pay for their education. So that's why we focus the kind of universities that pledge to pay for your education if you get in. And then I guess the least of our worries and the most of our worries is that they get in the first place. And then, universities allow them to attend financially. So reflectivity is a big one. Another aspect is network. So if you go into, say, artificial intelligence, and you are Murad, our student from latest student who got admitted into Yale, he has certain questions, certain expectations about the field, what artificial intelligence is all about. We, as students of liberal arts, it takes us a few clicks, a few original sources to learn into the field, understand what are some of the main questions in that field, and push them to look into that field on a deeper level. Then we can, reach out to some of our friends who work in the field, connect our students with them, so that they can get exposed professionally to those fields. So that's something that we collaborate. For example, in Uzbekistan alone, youth agency. And another interesting story about youth agency is that we facilitated 600 students to learn about the admissions process for free in a 7-day camp that the government funded. And we sent our alumni to teach in that camp. We set up a selection process to admit the students who will be most interested in that camp and who fit in the program. And basically for 7 days, we were teaching them for free all the different aspects of getting admitted into top universities. So reflectivity is one, thinking about topics on a much deeper level than it's ordinarily than it's ordinarily accepted. And then the third one would be the network that at Freshman is growing really, really fast. Then partnering with different agencies, with we partnered with the 6th International Congress on the popularization of Uzbek culture, and we sent our students there. So we try to, again, make sure that not only theoretically they understand topics, but they also can build the experiences. And the last stage is the most important, which is putting it all together. So yeah, you are interested in some particular topics on a very deep level. Then you have some experiences. Then how do you connect the dots in a story that will be very compelling? And for us, the guiding question in this is this: how can we put together a story that would be so interesting that Yale or Harvard would not be able to say no to that student? That would be so compelling. And what's interesting is that in public schools, just because there are more public school students, and just because they need to grapple with more of socioeconomic issues that students from private schools don't grapple with, they just have better stories inherently. Again, just because there are more of them and because of those economic challenges that they had to overcome to be in that position. So typically there's something that we can, and again, that's done through reflections. They write reflections, we notice something. Sometimes they might even be surprised that this is interesting about their life. For example, one of our students, he didn't have internet access till 2018. And for him, it was just a norm. And for us, it's like, wow, this is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating. This is something we need to communicate to admissions committees. So essentially, we help them explain their story to the admissions committees with their own social background and adapt their stories. So as you can see, I open to you all the secrets. It's just the question is in the execution itself. Who are the people who will be able to navigate you through all of those stages? It's either the people who, it have to be people who went through it themselves, and also those have to be people who academically, are very proficient. So because we also write research papers, for example. So essentially, it's like putting together a portfolio and then explaining it and building a narrative to be able to communicate it to top universities. So that's what we do. In I guess brief terms, even though I know it was a bit long, but that's essentially the process.
That's awesome. And I'm just assuming that the question is coming from someone who has studied at a U.S. university. He probably knows some of the processes. Probably they're similar to Ivy League schools, but there's obviously a little bit more complicated for Ivy schools. And also, my assumption is that they probably are in the U.S. And if they're in the U.S., can they still take advantage of the resources that you guys are providing at Freshman's Academy?
Just a quick note here, and I typically when our academy is described as based in Tashkent or based in Samarkand, people assume that this is, it is physically based. From 2018, all this time we've worked online. And we've worked online with students not just from Uzbekistan, but from students from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Belarus. We had new students from Greece, from Moldova, from UAE. We had even a student from El Salvador who woke up at 3 a.m. to attend our classes. So we fully work online. And again, online operation helps us to expose our students to diversity that that's essential. If you're coming from a very local place, you might not even pose certain questions because a lot of your assumptions are very set because people around you think in the same way as you do. So you don't really question a lot of the things around you. And when we put together people coming from very different places, that's where the magic happens. That's where and again, that's, by the way, one of the filters of how to get into Freshman Academy. We interview every student who gets in. One of the questions that we typically ask is how ready you are to change your opinion. Because if you go into college, if you go into Freshman Academy and you go out with the same opinions that you've held before, then something is wrong about your approach. Maybe you are not that open. When I came to college, I just realized a lot of the things that were super intuitive to me and almost self-evident got challenged by my education. So that's another big pillar of that approach that we've built in the past 4 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we highly encourage you, Jahangir, to reach out to Valera maybe directly. Would you be open to it on LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn would be one. Also, all the information about our courses is provided online.
Yes.
I would advise you to maybe start small. We have our SAT programs are just $60 per month. So that would allow people, if they successfully graduate, students to join our alumni network. An alumni network is a group of our successful students. We have students who got admitted to Stanford, to Yale, to Harvard, and so on and so forth. So that would be a very, very good platform to start thinking further about those.
Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. We can obviously do a little bit of collaboration in this as well, since a lot of our viewers are, watching you guys, and I'm sure they'll probably have some questions at some point. Maybe their friends are, applying for schools, or maybe their relatives are applying for school. So my suggestion is maybe we could do a quick flyer, build a quick flyer, and then post it on our social media and talking about all the details of the Freshman Academy, and and spread the word. Awesome. Any other comments from you, maybe Umid, on this specific subject of Freshman Academy? You're part of the team, I know, and you teach SAT, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I had been teaching SAT for the past 2 years at Freshman, and sort of we have had, I was recently telling Valera that I even lost account of how many students, of our students took SAT and got like 1,500 and above, which is a very good score because this is usually the average score that is accepted in the Ivy League. But then at Freshman specifically, I am moving more right now, transitioning more towards helping students with the actual admissions process, with like the college application. And I will speak from my own experience. I think that sort of one of the lessons that I learned over the past several years is that when you just don't know how things work, you just reach out and ask people who know. This just makes things so much easier. and there's a sphere that you are not familiar with, just reach out to people who know how it works, and ask them to explain it to you. And I'm sort of very happy that when sort of back in the days when the time came, I reached out to Valera and I asked for help. I was like, I don't know how things work here. I have no idea, so I need some guidance. I need some help. I don't know how this works. So help me, teach me. I'm ready to learn. And it takes it sort of it's also up to you to make the decision whether you want to learn or not, because it's also it also involves sort of accepting that you don't know something, you don't have enough information. So you're willing to learn. You're willing to learn, and you're willing to ask and reach out for help. And this is what doing today, even though some things may not be related to freshman education, but some things may be related to some subject spheres that I am involved at Yale. There may be some topics, or just some topics of discussion, in economics and in politics, and I would just have no knowledge about it, and I would reach out, and I would try to get my answer from the person who knows how things work. So my message to everyone who is watching now, or who will watch in the future after this interview is posted, do not be afraid of reaching out, and sort of do not, in some ways, I know a lot of people who say, oh, like, I don't want to reach out because I think I know the right path myself. I know how to do things right. That's good for you, but I think it's still important to sort of consult with someone first, and it's very powerful. So reach out to us, reach out to Valera, reach out to me, reach out to Freshman Academy team if you have any questions. We're always there. We always reply to messages. We're always happy to help. And yeah, this is something that we all went through. We all learned it, and we're happy to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the advice and recommendations. Again, what you guys are doing is amazing. And one of the reasons, again, just to recap, right? A lot of young people should try to apply for schools like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, is that they provide food, accommodation. They can even cover flight ticket expenses, right? They can even pay you a stipend. So there's some perks of it. I mean, we know that it's like the percentage of acceptance is pretty low, but with the right guidance that these young individuals are providing, I'm sure everything is possible. Perfect. Thank you so much, and let's keep going. Let's read some comments. Oh, guys, how's it going? Every time I speak Czech, good luck, guys. So wishing you guys good luck, basically. Valera Rikelian, where in Tashkent is Academy located? Does it have any physical address, or it doesn't?
No, absolutely not.
So
absolutely
everything
not.
is online.
Yeah, and also another interesting point about our work is that oftentimes we don't even know the parents. Some of the students who got admitted into the Ivy League, who we helped and guided through the process, we don't even know their parents. And that's very telling, because the guys are very independent, and they know what they want, and their parents are supporting them a lot in that process. And they build, for example, working with us, they build trust over time. So we don't allow typically students to join our program and then go for something. Some people have this rush, like, okay, I will take some full support program or take some more expensive courses. And we're like, okay, hold on, see how we work, get to know us. And when they do, their parents are seeing the results. That's where they're supporting them to enroll in the
you guys have a
program.
proven track record. A lot of students already
exactly.
got accepted, and
Exactly.
that already.
But again, there are also some nuances there, and quite important nuances. The first one is that we are not very enchanted about Ivy League education. One of the first things, we say Ivy League, we throw in all these words. But when people become a part of freshmen, we in the first days, we explain to them all the pluses and minuses of studying in the Ivy League institution. And there's some very serious minuses that we can talk about, and very serious concerns and challenges. For example, this question of the selection and treatment effect. To what extent Harvard produces talent or it just admits talent in the first place. There was some research done in the 2000s. I can post then the exact name of the researchers and the research. But basically, the idea was to compare the salaries of students who got admitted to Harvard and then went on to study to Harvard, and those students who got admitted to Harvard but then chose to go to a public school. And it turned out that the salaries of these two groups of people were actually quite similar. So what it meant is that Harvard selects already successful people. And then in the end, when you see all this success, it's not potentially because Harvard teaches you in a certain way that other universities don't teach you, but because they accept students that are already, ahead of the game. And of course, there is also another element of the network. So you're surrounded by people who are academically oftentimes stronger than you, so you learn from them. But also it might have a negative impact. When you're in your school and you're the best, it's different psychologically compared to the point when you're surrounded by people who are better than you.
Right.
One of my neighbors, for example, she was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee. In her, I don't know, she was 18, I was 19.
Wow.
And you're surrounded by these people who started the startups, and that can be a little bit overwhelming, and that might have a negative impact. And that's why you see a lot of the mental challenges, mental issues that people have in the Ivy League. So we're very realistic about it. So when people go in there, they're really, really prepared. So it's not just about getting people in, it's about making sure that those who go in know exactly what they're signing up for. And what they're signing up for is not just living in a castle, that looks like a building from like a 17th, 18th century, because that would wear off really quickly. You would get used to that very quickly, and then the reality would kick in. So yeah, there's that nuance to this work too.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing the other aspects of going to Ivy League schools. Yeah, I think we already answered this question. How will the admission people know that you are the top student, basically? Again, as they explained, I guess they look at the profiles, they look at the essays, they look at the story of the student, right? And their accomplishments, what they've done so far. Anything else? I think
It's essentially cross-checking, right? You have
cross-checking.
recommendation letters, you have your grades from school, you have your interview, and everything needs to be what we call internally consistent. And if they see that different sources tell different stories, that's where they become suspicious. So they don't even ask you. Some people are saying, hey, I need to send all my diplomas from all the Olympiads that I won. You don't need to send that. They don't even ask for your passport. Like it's a very interesting process. The process is built around different sources, and then when those sources do not match, that's where they become suspicious. So they know it's through your grades, they know it's through accounts of your teachers, and so on and so forth.
Okay, awesome. And we know that freshman team also helped organize a broad camp, a free 7-day program for 600 Uzbek students to get ready for competitive admissions. What is that about?
That was a very interesting collaboration with the youth agency. And
youth agency is an organization.
Yes, exactly. So they're predominantly working with youth affairs in Uzbekistan, pushing the different initiatives. And so we developed a program, a curriculum specifically for 7 days. We admitted some of the best students in Uzbekistan. I believe about 12,000 applications, maybe more, for the 600 spots. It was very, very competitive. And then our students did the selection process. We interviewed about 1,800 people in a span of like 2 months. And then we did 3 cohorts, 200 students each, all organized by, again, the teaching side and the selection side was organized by our alumni at Freshman, students who just got admitted. And the logistical side was on the youth agency. And I was it was not really a surprise, but just the experience of working with the youth agency, Sirajuddin Alimov specifically, Alisher Sudulayev, that was quite a fruitful collaboration where we had very good communication about the structure, where they supported basically every single initiative that we proposed. And it was very, very refreshing, because the I assumed that working with government agencies, that presumed a lot of bureaucracy, but then the freedom that we were given to, create a program with the vision that we had in mind, and it was very successful. And we know that because we collected anonymous feedback, and then we did the first cohort, 200 students, and then youth agency evaluated the feedback, and then we continued to do another 400 students. So
Okay.
we'll see the fruits of that. But again, also another important nuance here is that we don't want students to just get admitted to Yale and Harvard and top schools and just go there and never come back to Uzbekistan and potentially just stay in the US and cut all the ties from back home. So there are a lot of ways of how we're checking for that.
Right.
A lot of the questions are going into, say, motivations of studying there. We look for people who are very connected to their communities, to their societies, who want to do good back home, even if they're based, let's say, in the US. Keep that connection going, build relationships between the US and Uzbekistan and the world. So that's something that was very important objective in that camp. So that, again, ultimately the value is in what happens with those guys after.
Right.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. As I read it on your website, our mission is not just to prepare for you for IELTS and SAT or help write a motivation essay. A freshman, we're nurturing next generation of world leaders. That's a big statement in politics, economics, humanities, arts, and sciences. It's awesome. Yeah. I wish, we'll see the fruits of your efforts pretty soon. I mean, it's a generational change, what you guys are doing. And especially like in Central Asia, it's a much needed effort, I guess, because Central Asia needs really good education for it to be able to, integrate with the world, integrate with the developed world, and it's also important for all the students who are going to, top schools. It doesn't matter whether it's a top school or not, as long as they're getting good education abroad, not cutting ties with Uzbekistan and doing a little bit of contribution. That's just how we position ourselves as Uzbek diaspora. We always try to, connect, network, and also at the end contribute. You learn something. You come from that place, and you don't want to forget where you're coming from, and the people who are there will be looking up to you. All the community, like let's say the youth always looks up to the people of their own community. Like for example, if they choose a role model, they usually end up choosing someone from their own community because they think, they associate themselves with them because they're from the same community, right? Like even in the US, people from African American background usually look up to the people of the same background. And the people who come from, like, for example, Asian or Hispanic background, they also find some people who they look up to, and they're usually from the same background. They share a lot of similarities. And it's that's why I keep saying it's very inspiring to see you guys doing a lot of work that helps the youth to find the right path. And okay, so many questions in mind again. I know that it's already 12:30 a.m. in Singapore. I'm so sorry for that. Again,
No worries.
About that. Let's take maybe another 5-10 minutes, if you don't mind, to wrap up pretty much everything. There's a few questions left to ask, and then we'll also want to ask about your future goals and stuff. Let's see what we have on the comment section. Kızlarına taklif kıling, invite girls. We definitely will. Try to send some, referrals our way, please. We definitely need a lot of good, well-accomplished, young. It doesn't matter young or old people from Uzbekistan who are working and studying abroad. We'll welcome them. Welcome everyone, pretty much. I see that we also received another comment from Jahangir. Valera and Umid, thank you for answering my question. Just send a connection request to both of you. He's thanking me as well. Thank you. Of course, we'll keep doing some good work for you guys. Also, one thing that I was missing here, I know Umid was involved in creating a group. I'm trying to find this on my notes. You're doing some work at Yale University, right? You're building a community. Tell us about it, please.
Yes, for sure. So It's the whole idea just came during my first year in college at Yale. And when I first came, when I found myself on campus, I realized that I'm very homesick. I miss home a lot. I hadn't traveled much before going to the US for the first time in 2021. And as I
Right.
said, I was the most protected child in my family. So it was a big turning point in my life to start living by myself in a community that is so different from the
Yeah.
one that I grew up in Samarkand. And I realized that I'm missing home. I don't, there were no, I didn't know of anyone from Uzbekistan, and I really needed that connection with someone. I really missed the food, and so basically all the symptoms that you have when you first move, abroad. And I realized that places like Yale, they focus a lot on different parts of the world. There's always something. There's always a class that you can take
Right.
about the history of the Latin American countries, about the history of Western Europe, Eastern Europe, East Asia, everything.
Mm.
But Central Asia is just not studied enough,
Mhm.
and nobody really doesn't speak about Central Asia. Although I think that Central Asia is playing a big role, has been playing a big role in world politics for a very long time, and it's something that definitely needs to be discussed and people need to be aware of, and not
Mhm.
just sort of in economic, political, or any other terms, but also the people, right? People, we have one of the richest, I think, cultures in the world, and it's that idea to spread it across campus, to let people know that there is a place called Uzbekistan, there is a place called Kazakhstan, and also to make sure that we create a home away from home for people from Central Asian countries. And
Mhm.
so we came up with an idea to start Asian Crossroads, as we call
Mhm.
it. And we decided that we would not just focus on some discussions, but would also bring some cultural, aspects of our countries. And
Yep.
something, for example, a cultural event. The latest cultural event that we did was Navruz, in back in April. We didn't do it in March because we were in spring break. We did it in April, and we basically applied for funding, to get the food, and we had to deliver food from New York, which is a 2-hour car ride from Connecticut, from New
Oh
Haven.
wow.
Yeah, we had to deliver food from Queens, New York. We wanted to bring a music band, so we brought a very famous Persian music band
Nice.
to perform at Navruz, and so we asked for money, and Yale gave us $4,000 to organize that, and
Very generous of the university. That's awesome. Wow.
yeah, we spent everything to the very last cent. Literally $4,000 were all gone, and most of the expenses, of course, were allocated towards food and bringing it here to campus, and bringing the music band. But in the end, more than 150 people attended that event that we
Wow.
organized, and that was a great chance to tell about Navruz, to tell about Central Asia, and to get people more involved in the conversation. And for me, as the co-founder of Asian Crossroads, the ultimate goal would be, one of the goals, of course, is to create home away from home and to raise awareness. But the ultimate goal
Right.
before I graduate and leave Asian Crossroads behind me is to try to make Yale open whatever, like a certificate in Central Asian studies or a minor in Central Asian studies, because we don't have it. And
Right.
I think it's very, very important, especially when people like Miss Dilarbotosova comes to our university and teaches, because we need teachers, we need experts, and if we can bring teachers, if we can get the university involved, we will definitely achieve this goal. We will definitely try to make sure that we ask, well, we petition Yale to create, at least a minor in Central Asian studies. So yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm sure there was a lady who was like talking about this, talking about some Central Asian presence in the university. So definitely, there's some conversation that could be had between you guys. Awesome, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. And I just also did a little bit of research in terms of where Yale stands and its ranking. The third oldest college university in the U.S. is Yale University, which was established in 1701, 300 over 300 years ago, and 20% of the student body comes from abroad. Um, that's a lot. That's a big number, I believe. International student enrollment at Yale dates back to the 1800s, with 2,581 foreign students enrolled at Yale, representing 118 different nations. Wow, it's a very multicultural, international environment there, right? The university is home to the biggest international community in its history. With a 5% acceptance rate, Yale University applicants are the most stringent. An ACT score of between 33 and 35, or an SAT score of between 1400 and 1500 is required for admission to Yale University. The most sought after majors at Yale are in the social sciences, biological and biomedical sciences, mathematics, statistics. There's a few more. Many famous people have passed through their halls: 45 U.S. presidents, 52 Nobel laureates, 19 U.S. Supreme Court justices, and 13 current billionaires have come from Yale. Wow, it's very, very impressive. Um, how was the social life there? Like, is everybody friendly? Are they accepting, or what is the environment there?
It is a very friendly place. I think it's very nice. Everyone is ready to help you, especially when it was the first year. There were a lot of sections, programs put sort of by Yale to help first years or international students who arrive from countries which were not represented at Yale before. And so
Hmm.
it's a very supportive community. But then, of course, there are some difficulties as well.
Hmm.
You realize that not sort of you start hanging around the people who are similar to you in terms
Hmm.
of like your background, in terms
Right.
of your vision, in terms of your goals, just like it's the case everywhere. And there will be, of course, at least I had it, and at least Rustam, the person who came after me to Yale, had it. There will be this feeling that you're trying to fit in, and that you're failing to fit
Mm.
in because everyone is so different. It's a very diverse culture.
Right.
But then slowly you realize that you don't have to fit in. You can create your own nice community,
Mhm.
like Asian Crossroads, right? And just hang around the people who you like and who you want to be with and who you want to discuss. And that's just diversity. And you accept the diversity and you
Mhm.
try to find the strength in diversity and use them.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, and I'm sure you learn a lot from other people as well. Everybody brings some value to the table, and you're being friends with a lot of people from different countries, and it's awesome. And a little bit of facts about Yale-NUS University. Yale-NUS College is a liberal arts college in Singapore, established in 2011 as a collaboration between Yale University and the National University of Singapore. It is the first it is the first liberal arts college in Singapore and one of the first few in Asia, with an average acceptance rate of 5.2%, very close to Yale itself. It's among the most selective institutions in the world. Yale-NUS was the first institution outside of New Haven, Connecticut, that Yale University had developed in its 100-year history, making Yale the first American Ivy League school to establish a college bearing its name in Asia. Uh, let's talk about the environment in Yale-NUS, and just a little bit of facts about the life in Singapore, and how is it different compared to the US and Yale University.
Yeah, yeah, Hassan, it's actually quite funny that um, Yale-NUS might be the last, potentially might be the last campus of Yale outside of the US, because that project,
No way.
in many ways, yes, in many ways it worked out, and in many other ways it didn't work out. It's actually set to be closed in 2025, which is the Yale-NUS does not accept any more students.
Okay.
And my little brother, who got admitted into Yale-NUS too, so he will be one of the last batches of Yale-NUS. So again, it's a whole separate topic to discuss about the viability of the US liberal arts model outside of the US in places like Singapore. I actually have a discussion on that with the dean of Yale College that you can find online. You can just put Dean Pericles Lewis and then Freshman Academy, and I think you would be able to find it. So Yale-NUS was a very interesting collaboration because Yale did put its name on the project,
Yeah.
but at the same time, upon graduation, and that's something that I learned later. And by the way, the reason why I chose Yale-NUS over Amherst, I thought, first of all, Singapore versus a more outskirts place in the US, and I thought that Singapore was just more central. And again, coming from Samarkand, I was looking forward to that more urban feel.
So you could have come to the US
US,
instead
yeah,
of
I could have
really?
no, not the Yale campus, but I could have
Oh, yeah.
gone to a complete different campus in Amherst, which is very very solid still. But in any case, I did not get into Yale, but I've been to Yale as a part of the summer program, and then I was taught by Yale professors, and yeah. But it's
How'd you
interesting.
like it? How was the experience? Like it
Uh,
close to
it's
like
it's it's
Singapore.
ve- it's very it's very interesting. It's very interesting in a sense that Yale NUS program was very very unique because it
Yeah.
combined the NUS research rigor, and it combined Yale principles to education, and it also had a group of people who were more diverse geographically. So we were 50% international students, and we're very small. So we only had 200 students, and
Mm.
50% of them were Singaporeans, and then the other 50% were from all over the world.
Yeah.
And I feel like because a lot of our kids at Yale and US, they did not make it into the IVs in the US, there was this almost like a feeling in you that you need to almost work more. So I feel that academically it was very very rigorous, and again maybe the NUS influence there too. But it's also I feel like a lot of topics that you would approach from the American lens, because obviously Yale is based in the US. We approach from a more multidimensional lens. So I think that was another interesting defining feature of Yale and US. And yeah, I mean we can talk about like why liberal arts education outside of the US is not experiencing its best days. There are a couple of
Right.
campuses like NYU Abu Dhabi, Duke Kunshan, but
Right.
in general, yeah, there were some. Yeah, I don't know to what extent I can touch upon some of the topics, but
Yeah.
the liberal arts system, it's almost dangerous in the sense that you cannot think of a community of liberal arts students, and that's something I discussed with Dean Pericles too, because liberal arts is all about questioning basically everything, all the underlying assumptions that any community is, all the traditions, views that we all share. Liberal arts education pushes you to question even things that you are very certain in, and that results in that independence of thinking, but also that results in atomization of community intellectually, that everyone is thinking for
Mhm.
themselves. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a very interesting process. So you can imagine when you produce people who are thinking for themselves, who are like, it's very hard to imagine the entire community of the entire
Mhm.
population being all liberal arts students, because
Yeah.
in a sense, yeah, there's almost like a paradox there, that when you become too critical, when you become too it might become cynical almost. You can kind
Yeah.
of fall into that trap. So but also there were some financial issues, because NUS education was like $10,000, Yale NUS education was $80,000, and a lot of students at NUS were fairly asking. And it's interesting that NUS is higher in the rankings than Yale, and that's just because NUS is playing with the rankings. Also, partly, obviously it's a top research institution, but also it's that NUS knows how to exploit those rankings and put itself in a very very good spot.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a research school. It's a completely different experience from Yale if you go to NUS. not
Right.
to Yale-NUS. But it was a very interesting experience. And it's almost a privilege to be able to experience Yale-NUS, knowing that there are only 2,000 students in the world, or somewhere around that, maybe 3,000 students in the history of the world who studied in that institution, and just knowing how much Yale invested into it and NUS invested into it. It's a privilege. And of course, it was sad when that announcement came in. We actually thought that NUS will pull out of the project, but no, Yale would pull out of the project. But it turned out that it was NUS actually in the end that decided to terminate Yale-NUS and basically transform it into NUS College.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, a lot to discuss, but it's interesting how it played out in the end.
Yeah, I really like how you deliver your messages, like elaborate all these, facts and everything. And I think your language skills are good. It's not only about English level, but the way you present yourself is amazing. And I think it's part of the reason is because maybe you were raised by a teacher. Is that what it is? Like your grandparents,
Very much so.
parents
Very
were
much
like,
so. Yeah.
and you started learning English very early on. And yeah, awesome. I like the way you present yourselves. And we had a couple comments about that as well. So I didn't bring it up. I forgot. But yeah, thank you guys. Sorry, I want to let you guys go, but the last question I have to ask, what are the plans? What are your plans for the future? What are you guys trying to do within the next maybe 1 or 2 years? You guys want to keep studying and, getting more education, or you guys want to start your career, or maybe some sort of startup or something? I don't know. Like, enlighten us.
Umid, do you want to go first? I feel like it's a little bit more tangible for you now.
It's actually okay. Yeah, it may be more tangible, but yeah, if we talk about the next 2 to 3 years, then I'm still in college. I'll be spending my next year in China, and after that, the next 2 years, my junior and senior years at Yale. And then after that, it gets less tangible, and I don't know what will sort of wait for me after graduation. But I'm sort of considering the options, both in the motherland, in Uzbekistan, and the US. So we'll see how it goes, and hopefully, Hasanaka, you will invite us in like 3 years to do a quick check with us, and so that we can tell you where we are, and sort of what our short-term plans are, and
Yeah, absolutely. And we could actually build a little more like continuous collaboration with you guys, especially with Freshman Academy, because that was the initial goal of Uzbek diaspora, to help like increase the level of education among Uzbek students, and help how do you say it, help students have this ambition in life, not like stuck with the reality that there is in Uzbekistan, right? That the education level is not that high as we want it to be. But that's just the mission that you guys are on directly aligns with our mission, and we would love to collaborate with you guys, and we'll definitely talk about it outside of the camera, but for sure, absolutely. Anything you want to add? Did I interrupt you?
No. You're very, very right, and yeah, that is what we'll be trying. We'll see where freshman is in like 3 years.
Yeah,
Sort of, will hopefully bring you new accomplishments, and sort of
absolutely.
let
We'll
your
be excited
audience.
to know for sure. Yeah.
And we'd also sort of see how we can sort of figure things out with building sort of and strengthening the diaspora, in the US through the network of colleges that we're trying to build, of like student organizations in colleges that we're trying to build, and maybe even beyond that.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Our platform is yours. If you ever have to need any online platform to tell anything to your audience, to our audience, you're more than welcome. Reach out to us whenever you can. And the microphone is yours, Valera. Let's go.
Yeah, in my case, it's quite interesting. I took this gamble and continued doing freshman upon graduation while staying in Singapore. I had a few options, like I mentioned. So I could go to a startup, I could go to a corporate world. I mean, I could, but I don't think it would just play out. Just knowing myself, I just don't think that I would fit in that more strict system. We have once in a while we have venture capital reaching out to us, venture capitalists, and saying, hey, you're doing something that's impressive. We would want to scale your project. We want to make your project scalable, invest in it,
Wow.
go to more countries, and scale it. And
Let's
we
do it.
always have to push back and say, hey, we don't think it's scalable. Because how many students from Uzbekistan, from Central Asia, can actually go to all the top schools? And we apply to top schools because they provide financial aid. So that's
Yeah.
our target audience. So essentially, I think that right now our goal is to attend to the demand that we already have. That's a big problem. We, for example, admissions program that we launch, we typically have from 60 to 85 applications for 15 spots that we have, which means that, so again, we grow very in an extensive way. So for us to grow, we
Right.
need to hire more people, basically, and train more people. So that's the next step. It's like, to what
Yeah.
extent can we scale while not losing that secret sauce, which again, it's not really a secret. Secret sauce is
Yeah.
basically people with experience who share our values, who share our knowledge, and who we can train. And then and typically it's our students themselves. I honestly, I don't see a 3-year vision for freshmen. It's only 15-20 years from now. I think that's where we'll see a true effect. And from the beginning it was like that, because
Right.
ultimately the project will fully play out when Umid, Murat, Rustam, all the other kids who are just entering unis, they will grow up and what they will do.
Yeah.
So we're imagining the future where a lot of the guys will give back to freshmen, where we can create collaborations with, say, Umid is going into finance, or Murat is going into environmental science. So we can, or Rustam, Murat is going into artificial intelligence. Guzarkhon, we have lots and lots of people right now who are up and coming. So the idea is to build this community, and a community of people who represent Central Asia, and then in different spheres, share that knowledge with the new generation. So ultimately, we want to create that positive feedback where more students go outside, build those connections, and then the next generation is getting even stronger and stronger and stronger. We do consider going into Singapore market. Again, we're not even thinking of it in terms of markets, in terms of it's not really business. It's very much a passion project.
Yeah.
And I talked with a couple of Singaporean leaders here, people who are my age, people who are older, and they're just fascinated with what we do. And we just feel that we can go into Singapore and not work with private school kids who typically represent Singapore on the world stage, but go into public school, into polytechnics, and then help them tell their stories. And again, have basically the same work that we do here. So ultimately, the idea is to shake up. Just one last point: the need blind
Yeah.
admission system. We are not idealizing it, because we understand partly why it was set up in the first place. So the need blind admission system, on the surface, it might seem like it's the system that allows for that social lift, that allows for that redistribution of resources, that allows for someone like Murat or Umid or Rustam or Guzarkhon who will be going to Harvard. That's the surface level interpretation of it. I feel like the general interpretation of it, the way that we see it, is that it's a legitimation tool for universities to basically say, hey, money does not matter. You can be a daughter or a son of a billionaire, but you got into Yale because of your merit, not because of the resources that you had. And I'm not too sure if this is correct, right? So you basically set up a system where you say, we don't care about whether you can pay or not. We'll admit the best ones, but the best ones are, we have the best ones because of the resources that they have in the first place. They can afford teachers, they can afford. I have calls from once in a while where it's very rich parents who basically say, hey, we can create a startup to support our daughter or our son. We have unlimited resources. Do something with it. So oftentimes we have to turn it down, because we talk with the kids themselves, and they just don't want any of that. They don't want to study at Yale, and they have their own interests. So that's very much the goal of ours, to have people represented and shake up those institutions too. Because yes, there is diversity at Yale, at Harvard, but also there is no diversity at, again, all the top schools. And we want to change that. We want new people who represent very local places that have never seen anyone get admitted into top schools. Give them all the resources, because ultimately, just one last point. In US, some parents pay $1 million, and you can read about that online, to do the same work as we do. And we could have charged much more than that. And there's a huge market of very affluent parents who are ready to pay for that. And again, need blind admissions is not as idealistic as it may seem. The entire system does favor people who have financial resources, and it's a legitimation technique that you can say, hey, Jeremy, my son, and you can share it with other billionaires or millionaires, and you can say, hey, so he did not get admitted because I basically opened a startup for him and gave him every resource he needed or she needed to become successful, but it's because of their merit, which again, yeah. So that's something that we're trying to shake up that system a bit. Yeah, I believe Hasan, you might be muted now.
My bad. There you go. That was a emergency car passing by. I had to mute myself. But yeah, somebody was asking, where's Valera from? From Uzbekistan. Your English is very good. How do you achieve the results? We definitely talked about it already. So watch the full interview and you'll get an answer. I apologize for those whose questions we didn't bring up yet. This is an ongoing conversation. It's not the end, right? And thanks for all the effort and time you guys put in today. And it was truly an amazing conversation. I know we could have continued for another hour or two. We initially wanted it to have a separate interviews, right? But then we just decided to combine since you guys are friends already. But yeah, appreciate it. Let's stay in touch. There's a lot to say, but we'll leave it for the next time. I appreciate it. Everyone have a great weekend, and yeah, wish everyone good luck.
Thanks a lot, Hasanaka, for having us. All the best in your work.